infrastructure flagship projects, and the 4PH or Pambansang Pabahay para sa Pilipino program of the Marcos administration. While these numbers are encouraging, the administration under President Marcos Jr. Continues to undertake measures to create more jobs and higher quality jobs for Filipinos. And to discuss with us today the results and also what our government is doing in terms of strategies to further improve employment quality in the country, we are joined by the Department of Labor and Employment Secretary, Bienvenido Laguesma, and NEDA Secretary, Arsenio Balisacan. Good morning, Secretaries.
Good morning.
Okay, go ahead.
Good morning, good afternoon, good morning sa ating mga kaibigan sa press, sa media. Magandang umaga sa inyong lahat.
Sec Balisacan.
Okay, thank you, and good morning again. So we just want to clarify the numbers, the employment numbers released yesterday, no? Because we noticed that the May data, May 2024 data, were compared with April 2024 data. No, it's we note that is. And those numbers are not quite comparable in the sense that when we use, there is a good deal of seasonality as employment data, and so the appropriate comparison, and this is our practice, is to compare the May 2024 data with the same year, same month, same period in the previous year, no? So that should be May 2023 data. And that's the basis for our saying that the unemployment rate decreased from 4.3% in May 2023 to 4.1% in May 2024. And that means that if you look at the numbers, the total additional employment created by our economy was something like 605,000 workers added in the pool of employed people, no? And that is very encouraging because if we look further, we zoom into the data, we find that the increase in employment came from jobs opened up in manufacturing, in industry, and in services, no? And also that many of those jobs are those that are require middle skilled workers, no? And the indicators of the quality of jobs also are encouraging. The underemployment rate, as Daphne mentioned, dropped from 11.7 to 9.9%, no? Which is one of the lowest in many years, no? So that's very encouraging. And the other one is that if you look at the type of workers, no, by class of workers, we see that the big increases are in the wage and salary workers, which is a good indicator of the quality of work. In the Philippine Development Plan, we use the proportion of wage and salary workers in the total employed workers as an indicator of quality. You know? When we see that number rising, the quality of employment is rising. And so it's very encouraging that those numbers have increased between May 2023 and May 2024. I can stop there.
Okay. Let's hear from Secretary Laguesma.
Good morning again, and like NEDA, the Department of Labor and Employment considers it more reliable and actually for making conclusions on the state of the employment in the country on a year-to-year basis. It was as mentioned by Secretary RC, yung karakter kasi ng ating merkado ay merong seasonality, may volatility. Dagdag pa natin ang ating bansa ay prone to calamity. We utilize the DOLE also actually make use of the year month on month so that we can make adjustments on the implementation of the programs of the Department of Labor and Employment. But certainly, the most reliable for us na pwedeng pagbatayan yung year on year, and Secretary RC already mentioned yung mga nakita namin na bright spots, foremost of which would be the underemployment, the reduction. Even if we use the month-on-month basis, the drop is really tremendous. 2.2 million, April 2024 to May 2024. And that speaks a lot for us, the Department of Labor and Employment. It reflects that some of the efforts or the interventions being done by the Department of Labor and Employment through the collaboration and participation of the private sector ay medyo bearing fruit now, and this gives us encouragement. And you are also very aware that last week of June, we had this National Employment Summit where we presented to the President the Trabaho para sa Bayan report, now which is actually a deliberate and collective effort on the part of the agencies constituting the Interagency Council of the Trabaho para sa Bayan Act, chaired by the Secretary of NEDA, co-chaired by DTI and the DOLE, TESDA, and DBM and DOF as members. But the more important part of that council would be the inclusion of representatives from the labor sector, employer sector, informal sector, as well as the vulnerable and marginalized sector. So, kitang-kita dyan na tuloy-tuloy ang ginagawang mga hakbangin ng ating pamahalaan sa pangunguna ng ating Pangulong Ferdinand R. Marcos Jr. para tugunan yung mga kaganapan sa ating labor market. Dagdag ko rin lamang na dito sa April 2024 at saka May 2024, may pumasok na bagong new entrant sa ating merkado, more or less 600,000. At 80% ay na-absorb sa ating merkado, no? More than 500,000. Ibig sabihin talagang nagkakaroon ng sustained efforts to really help those who are actually seeking jobs, no? Hindi naman nawalan ng trabaho yung hindi nasama dun sa nadagdag, kundi siguro hindi sila nakakita ng appropriate na trabaho, and that remains to be a challenge for the Department of Labor and Employment, the NEDA and DTI, as well as the other departments na really focus on really making sure na ang employment opportunities will be available to our working men. So,
Okay, thank you, Secretaries. We open the floor to questions, starting with Katrina Domingo, ABS-CBN2.
Good morning, Secretaries. How will the recent wage hike affect the employment numbers, considering that some employers have already expressed that they will not be able to sustain several workers because of the adjustment?
Our estimates of the data that we have seen so far and the levels of adjustments, are quite reasonable because these are sets by the various regional wage boards, where the three parties, the labor, the management, and government sit together. Now, so they're not really that constraining when it's come to the economy, for so long as those wage adjustments are not too high to discourage investments, those adjustments are welcomed. And the data that we have seen is that as of March, April this year, those adjustments are simply adjusting to the level of inflation, and a little bit more, so that the purchasing power of workers' wages and salaries will not fall, and that should not be a worry to the business community and to even for us as economic managers, because the impact of that on inflation or on growth is not that much. We can absorb that.
Yes, just to add, the adjustment actually, let me emphasize, is actually on the minimum wage. It is the entry level, the floor level, para maproteksyonan, mabigyan ng social protection yung mga manggagawa so that they will not be subjected to undue low pay. Over and above the minimum wage, that can be subjected to further discussion or negotiation between the employer and the worker in companies that do not have not been organized or do not have unions. In the case of those with unions, the appropriate mechanism will always be collective bargaining negotiation, because the CBA or the collective bargaining agreement should contain provisions of benefits over and above the minimum. Just try to look at, in relation to your question, how would it impact? You are also very aware that a big majority of our existing businesses belong to micro, small enterprises. And that's why the members of the tripartite board, meaning there is a representative from the employer, the worker, and then NEDA, DTI, and DOLE, would really look at all these factors actually provided under the law to make sure that the needs and interests of the workers and their families are protected, including the business, with them having the opportunity for a fair return of investment and for expansion and growth, as well as countryside development and the possibility of creating more employment and thereby providing members of the family, or say a family of 5 with 2 or 3 members who can actually work, yun yung papasok sa family income. So, sama-sama yan. Yung nakaraang taon, nagkaroon din ng epekto yung adjustment na binigay ng National Capital Region Tripartite Wages and Productivity Boards. If I recall correctly, merong more or less mga 20,000 na naapektuhan doon sa ginawa lang adjustment. I'm not yet sure kung gaano ang magiging epekto niyan nitong 35. Sabi kasi maliit, pittance, insulto, pero there is no intention of the board to really go to that kind of direction. The direction is really how are we able to maintain the employment level and sustain the growth of the economy. Secondly, look at how it will impact on inflation, as well as the total effect nito sa ating gross domestic product. So, sama-sama yan na tinitignan, and I do hope that the adjustment made by the National Capital Region would not have an adverse effect on our nakikita nating encouraging growth sa ating employment sector.
Sir, follow-up question for the NEDA. Do we have an estimate as to how many workers will be affected by this current adjustment? Will it be bigger than the last year's 20,000 workers, or will it be smaller than that?
Well, yeah. Okay, let me, for the wage orders that have been issued as of March 2024, no? I still have all the numbers, but our estimates so far suggest that the national output GDP would be impacted negatively, but it's a very small impact. No? It's just about 1/10 of 1%. No, it's very negligible. It could increase unemployment rate, but again, it's a very negligible number, and it could impact on something like up to 40,000 to 140,000, depending on the region. It's still, again, not as big as one you would expect if those rate adjustments were much higher. No, I should note that for so long as the economy is expanding because of other things like investments are coming in, then the offsets would be there, no? So the economy can still grow. And as I noted earlier, the unemployment rate decreased, no? In May 2024, no? That's our latest data, to 4.1, no? That number is already actually very low already, no? Very low, even compared to more mature economies, more developed economies, no? That's why our focus as economic managers is not so much on the employment per se, but the quality of jobs that we are now focusing on, and so we want to ensure that that quality of jobs would provide decent earnings for our workers, so that they can many of our poor people can graduate out of that poverty, you know. But this will require a lot of investment, no? That's why our focus is improving the ecosystem for investment. Our president, the members of the cabinet are wooing investors, not just the domestic investors, but even more importantly, the foreign investors to come to our shores to invest, because only then will that quality of jobs will improve. The more plants, more equipments, more jobs in the high quality sectors like manufacturing will open up.
Secretary, we talk about improving job quality in the country. What about our labor force, Secretary Laguesma? What are we doing to support that when the better jobs are coming in? Is our labor force also ready?
Yes, I mentioned earlier the Trabaho para sa Bayan plan. It also includes strategies and approaches to be able to make our workers not simply locally competitive, but globally competitive. So we continue to provide upskilling, retooling, and the present buzzword of lifelong learning for our workers. The other thing is that the Department of Labor and Employment is actually happy that 3 programs which has something to do with youth employability has been provided additional budget by the President in his agenda for prosperity, which is the budget for 2025. And I'm referring to the special program for the employment of students, the government internship program, as well as the Job Start program of the Department of Labor and Employment. In addition, we have now actually strengthened our career development support program. Basically, this has something to do with counseling and influencing, in close quote, our students to look at the perspective of what would be available jobs in the future once they are able to graduate. And we are able to do this because we are in close collaboration and partnership with the private sector. Remember, marami tayong mga kapartner na mga business organization, and very recently nagbigay din ng commitment ang itong private sector corporation on jobs, and not simply this organization, but early on yung mga organisasyon kagaya ng IT, ITBAP, IT Business Association of the Philippines, which committed to more or less create additional 1 million jobs by 2028. And we are trying to help them out by making sure that available trainings will be there, responsive to their requirements, and also to make sure that policies are actually deliberate and stable, in addition to the directive of the President on ease in doing business and reducing the cost of business. That's why all of the programs, plans, and actions of the present administration are always at the center, would always be employment. To make sure that walang maiwan, sama-sama, na mabigyan ng pagkakataon ng ating mga kababayan.
Salamat. Eden Santos, Net 25.
Good morning po, Secretaries. Clarification lang po dun sa how many workers affected by this wage hike order. Yung po bang 40,000 to 140,000, yun po yung numero, figures ng mga naapektuhan from out of how many millions employees?
Is growing, and the labor market is quite robust, no? So if you lose one job there are other jobs being opened up, no? Like as I said earlier, during this period there are 600,000 plus new employment, no? These are new jobs opened up in the economy. And our economy continues to grow at 6 to 7% this year, no? So that's will be accompanied by quite a lot of jobs. But again, our focus is really improving that quality of jobs so that we can achieve our single-digit poverty reduction by 2028. Yan yung ano namin eh. The only way we can do that is the quality of jobs must improve.
What about po on the part of the employers? Or mga kumpanya po, may maapektuhan din ditong wage hike order po na ito?
Yeah.
Either nagbawas sila ng tao or nagsarami, ganun po ba?
Most likely, yun yung sinasabi natin na na impact na 40,000. But again, whether that is a permanent one or just a short-lived one, because these workers can move to another industry or another company that is expanding because of the growth in the economy. So usually you see this kind of movements. You lose your job for 1 month, 2 months, and then you find another job, and for so long as that better job that you're moving in is a better.
Secretary, I'm referring po dun sa mga kumpanya naman po na pinagtatrabahuan itong mga posibleng maapektuhan po ng wage hike order. Kung meron bang posibleng magsara dahil dito sa pagtaas ng
Hindi
sahod?
naman siguro, because as we said, the wage adjustments are quite within the reasonable bounds, na that good enough to ensure that the purchasing power of the workers' wages, salaries is preserved.
Last question.
Can I just add?
Sige po,
We
sige.
continue to closely monitor the possible effect or impact of any wage adjustments. No? We have been doing this kasi as we look at, we are not saying na any transformation or anything that happens in the world place of work will always have some impact, whether positive or negative. But we focus on the positive, yung nakikita natin lumalago ekonomiya. And as was mentioned earlier by Secretary RC, yung wage and salary workers year on year, nadagdagan na mahigit 1 milyon. No? So, ang ibig sabihin nun, nakakatagpo sila ng mas permanenteng trabaho, mas remunerative at saka mas sustainable. Yun yung direksyon, kaya nga tuloy-tuloy pa. If you will recall, the start of this administration, merong 8-point socio-economic agenda ang ating Pangulo, tinanslate ng NEDA through the help of the other departments into a Philippine Development Plan. And taking the cue from there, the Department of Labor and Employment actually came up also with the Labor and Employment Plan, which was also complemented by TESDA, yung National Technical Education Skills Development Plan. And very recently, yung Trabaho para sa Bayan Plan. So you can see from the very start, the direction really is to look at how we can have more productive, remunerative, and sustainable jobs. Kasi that's the only way that we have to go para ma-achieve yung at least three na gustong makita: inclusive growth, reduction of poverty to single digit, and finally yung nasa puso ng taga-Department of Labor and Employment, quality jobs na sustainable.
Sa ano lang po dun sa part nung yung 4PH, yung pambansang pabahay program po, medyo hindi po yata na sustain or na ma-reach yung target po. May effect po ba ito sa ating ekonomiya?
No, hindi sa not that we have reduced it because we cannot do it, no? It's just that initially kasi the plan was to have 1 million housing units every year, no? When we look at the implications of that on the economy, particularly on the fiscal issues, ang decision natin, ang sabi natin was hindi kaya because it can impact on the other sectors because the program requires subsidizing the beneficiaries because the targeted beneficiaries of the low income households, no, and it involves giving subsidy, interest subsidy to the loan, so and that's borne by government, you know. And as we put in more money there, of course we would have less resources for education, for health, for infrastructure. So, you know, we have to balance to ensure that the economy is not affected adversely. So we are still keeping the program, but not at the level that was originally produced, but it's still very significant, and it's going to contribute to additional jobs. And in fact, that's, as we said, that's where some of these jobs, many of these jobs that were generated, these 1.5 new jobs, new employment created, no, as opposed to the 40,000 na displaced by that minimum wage, no. You think about this 1.5 million new employment. That's quite a big one, and as I said, part of that was coming from this 4PH program.
Anybody? Ivan Mayrina, GMA 7.
Good morning, Secretaries.
Good morning.
Napag-uusapan po ba sa Cabinet ang calls to ban POGOs? You were quoted previously, Secretary Balisacan, that if asked, you will support the call to ban POGOs. If you look at it from the cost-benefit perspective. Sa panig naman po ni Secretary Lagues, malabagit nyo, 22,000 workers, I think, yung mawawala ng trabaho sakaling iban yung mga POGOs. Ano ho ang nagiging usapan sa gabinete tungkol dito?
Well, we haven't really talked about it in the sense of, I mean, at the level of the economic managers, and I'm not quite aware if there are other meetings, but I keep my view that our attention should be our focus should be in generating high quality jobs, good jobs, and I think that creating gambling jobs is one of what I define as good jobs, so that's how because I think that there are a lot of other opportunities for for the country, for the economy, and for our workers, and we can focus on those.
Sa DOLE, we always are concerned with loss of employment. And so, but we will always, in a sense, abide kung ano man yung decision vis-a-vis this item. In the meantime, we have already done profiling of those who will be affected just in case magkaroon talaga ng decision na isarayan. Kasi yung mga nawawala ng trabaho, hindi naman binibitawan ng Department of Labor and Employment with the programs na ini-implement niya. Tututok, una yung job facilitation. We, in partnership with the private sector, we have conducted job fairs, Nung nakaraang taon, mahigit na 2,000 jobs fair yung nagawa namin all throughout the country in partnership with the PESO, Public Employment Service Offices. Tutuloy din namin yung aming pagtingin doon sa upskilling ng mga maapektuhan ng mga manggagawa, retraining. And then the other component would always be, if they would like to have a livelihood project, we'll be willing to support them, help them. So yun, tuloy-tuloy kami. Hindi namin iisipin na ngayon ay magsasara na dahil ginagawa din naman namin yung trabaho, anticipating na baka magkaroon ng kanong klaseng decision, then workers would have the option to look at ano yung mga available sa kanya in terms of employment, job facilitation, and also livelihood program. So yun yung direction ng DOLE sa ngayon.
Okay. Isa pa, please. Secretary Balisacan, sir, in a few days, the President will deliver his State of the Nation address. And one of, if not the single biggest concern of ordinary Filipinos is the price of commodities and inflation. And while inflation eased based on latest PSA data, food inflation remains high. Ang tanong ko po what has been done And why is inflation apparently turning out to be a tough nut to crack for government, lalo na po itong food inflation? And ultimately, can ordinary Filipinos look forward to better days ahead with regard to inflation?
I think the last question is better days ahead. Yes, I am quite optimistic that we are moving in that direction. Remember that our inflation target for the year is within the 2 to 4% inflation band, no? And that's our medium-term target all the way to 2028. So now, the high inflation, the food inflation that happened in recent months is an outcome, you know, of it's a confluence of factors. No, one of this is the El Nino that we had. That's El Nino is now over, and now we are under La Nina. We hope that you know, you don't have the other extremes of typhoons and, you know, and destructive floods and then the other compounding factor was the supply from the global market, no, because some countries restricted their exports, particularly India in the eve of their national elections, no, and also at some point Vietnam, no, and that constricted, reduced the supply of rice in particular, no, in the global market, and it led to a sharp increases in world prices, and that lasted for, and it's still there, at a highly elevated level, no? For our meats, as you know, we had the ASF for that impact quite heavily on our swine, you know. And so those things, and then we have all these supply chain issues. It has occurred to us. It's a big realization on our part that the lack of logistics, you know, and warehousing and cold storage systems in areas where we produced our food is a major constraint, and so the government over the past 2 years has now been investing into this infrastructure. We are supporting a major push in our logistics, warehousing, and distribution. We are, as you know, we are also opening up a bit more the economy so that we can stabilize prices, because that's one of the tools available for the economy, for us, no? So those are some of the things that have happened in the past, and our efforts in the past few months have been to address those issues, particularly in agriculture. We have in the last 2 years during this administration, and even in the budget proposed for 2025, the increase in the budget of agriculture is very high compared to many other sectors. And the intention really is to get that productivity growth happening in our sector, so that we don't have to import too much, we don't have to be too dependent on imports. That's the whole intention of our president when he did push for a higher, much higher budget for our agriculture.
Last for Secretary Laguesma, sir. Sa kaugnay po na tanong, isa rin sa mga pangunahing alalahanin ng mga Pilipino yung trabaho may katiyakan at yung sahod na nakabubuhay, lalo't patuloy nga po yung mataas na presyo ng mga bilihin. Ang tanong po sa Dolly, are we creating jobs at the rate that we would like to see? And what jobs are we creating? At sa usapin po ng sahod, ano ang asahan ng mga manggagawang Pilipino moving forward?
Let me just emphasize that the job generation and job creation is actually the domain of the private sector. Government's responsibility is to be able to create an enabling environment conducive to business. So that means kasama yung mga polisiya na ikangay stable, nagkakaroon ng tamang pagpaplano ang mga negosyo. At kasama din ang usapin may kinalaman sa paghahanda sa ating workforce. I mentioned earlier interventions or programs of the department vis-a-vis youth employability. we also would like to also emphasize. Iniiwanan, tinitingnan lahat kung ano yung pwedeng maitulong ng departamento. So tuloy-tuloy, Ivan, yung ginagawa ng Department of Labor and Employment. As we say, we also look at balancing, not simply yung pangangailangan ng mga manggagawa o kanilang mga needs, pati yung kapasidad ng ating mga employers. And that goes to say na dapat meron din silang encouragement in terms of a fair return of investment and opportunity for expansion and growth. So these are actually things that we do. We try to balance. We will never ever be able to strike the very perfect balance. Even on the matter of providing or coming up with an adjustment in the minimum wage, it's always a thankless job. But we are actually responsible because that's the mandate provided for by law. So we continue to implement laws that are actually within the jurisdiction or ambit of the Department of Labor and Employment, including going to a situation, magkaroon ng pagbabalanse yung ano ba yung adjustment na naangkop, no? At magtitiyak din na kakaroon tayo ng pagkakataon na magkaroon ng job enhancement, job maintenance, at hindi lang basta job, yun nga yung nabanggit ni Sec RC, we'd like to look at productive, sustainable, and quality jobs.
Salamat.
Okay, Maricel Halili, TV5.
Magandang umaga po. Secretary Balisacan, follow-up lang po dun sa POGO. Gaano kalaki po yung revenue loss that we expect kapag po, once the government decides to ban POGO, how accurate yung 20 billion pesos per year na revenue losses?
I don't have the numbers with me, so I can't respond to the actual number to that estimates. But I recall that when I was asked about this earlier, then we did some estimates at that point. But again, it's not. It may be a big number, but the cost and particularly social cost of POGOs are quite high, and also we are trying to position our country as a legitimate place for business where we are trying to attract investors to come, tourists to come, and so the least that we want is to have a reputation na nandito yung mga criminals, nandito yung so, things like that. So the social cost, the way we view it, NEDA may not be worth those revenues, because if we succeed in generating those jobs anyway, we will get much more than what we lost.
And sir, as early as now, meron na po ba tayong tinitingnan na possible alternatives na source of revenues just in case na mag-decide na i-ban na yung POGO?
Yes, because if we expand the businesses, then we generate more revenues from income taxes, corporate taxes, from all kinds of, if we import some equipment, we also derive tariffs revenues there. So if you put all this together, there should be more than what you lost in the POGO.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Before we continue, I'd like to wrap up this live briefing on air, and we can continue after we go off air. Thank you so much to Secretary Laguesma and Secretary Balisacan, and thank you Malacañang Press Corps. This concludes the live part of our press briefing. Thank you.
Excuse me.